You have a vlog? That's really cool.
All right, here we are, episode 3 of IT Coach for Small Business Leaders. We just got finished with a 2-part series talking about the cloud and understanding the cloud and creating a cloud roadmap. I thought there was some really good stuff covered in those 2 episodes. So for anyone who hasn't watched those, I would highly recommend backtracking just a little and watch those 2 episodes on the cloud. But now we're jumping into the topic of IT challenges for small business. And when we talked about developing this, I guess we picked 3 randomly because you often see a top 3 list, but we talked about identifying the top 3 challenges for small business related to IT. And I was really surprised at how kind of quickly and precisely you narrowed it down to 3. And so I'm kind of excited for these 3 episodes because it seems like these were very apparent things that I'm sure are going to relate with a whole lot of people. So my question is, since we're putting out really great content here on these IT topics, should we be charging people for this?
And how would we monetize that exactly? So,
I don't know. I got to think about that for next time. So
we just put the little PayPal link down in the corner, and
yeah, maybe we could donate. We could come up with a good cause and donate to our cause.
There we go.
So, okay, so here's the question: if we were going to charge for this, what would it be worth?
Hopefully, it's invaluable, Josh. That's all I can say.
Great answer. That's a great answer. Okay, so getting into the topic, top 3 IT challenges for small business. Like I said, you narrowed it down to 3 really quickly. The first one you covered, and I don't know if this was what you saw as the most important or if your top 3 was just in a random order, but the first thing we're going to talk about was that small companies, basically 100% of the time, are going to encounter skills gaps when it comes to IT demand. So can you just provide some context around that statement, based on your role as a VCIO?
So, I was thinking about this the other day. I've been in some role in IT for, I think I figured it was 32 years now, which doesn't seem possible because I'm not that old. And during that transition, I think 32 years ago in the IT field, it was possible to be an expert on most things in the IT world, or at least have a high level of knowledge about them. Mm-hmm. You can at least have a high level of knowledge about a wide variety of topics. Mm-hmm. Nowadays that's not even remotely true. Right. The IT field has become way too broad, way too diverse. So it's literally not possible. So the reason, I would say that's 100% of the time, because it's literally not possible for a company to keep on staff someone that's going to have all the skills that they need to service an IT infrastructure and have one that's truly going to really give that company what they need in terms of productivity and really let them use all the tools that are available.
Yeah. So, I guess that's obviously why companies like InfoSystems exist.
Right.
Small business do not have unlimited resources to just staff up for every single IT need they're ever going to encounter. So, at some point they're going to experience a skills gap and have to reach out for help.
Sure.
So one of the one of the thoughts around that is there are probably some common inflection points that happen in the existence of a company where they're going to encounter a need for help. Do you have any thoughts about what some of those common inflection points are?
Yes, I think a couple of two very common scenarios that we see. One, for the small business is they really have no true IT person on staff.
Mm-hmm.
So what they have typically is an office manager, or it seems to often be the CFO
Yeah.
or someone like that that has become the de facto IT person in the office, probably because they made the mistake of changing a toner cartridge once and they got slapped with that label. Ooh, this guy or this girl, they really know what's going on.
It's hilarious because that happened to my wife at her
Yeah.
office, and she's, obviously not an IT person, but
Right.
she's the IT person.
Yeah, and it's all too common. So that's one scenario, and so their IT infrastructure, it may have been put in by professionals 10 years ago. It may have been someone's cousin came in and who was on summer break and put it in for them,
Yeah.
and it's met their needs for a few years, but it's in disrepair. It's stagnant. It's not really doing much to help boost their productivity.
Yeah.
So that's one scenario we see commonly. The other one is they do have some IT staff. I will tell you what the most common skill set that we see if they do have one. It's probably someone that has their Microsoft certification.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to set up a Microsoft server. They know how to deal with Windows operating system. And that's a very valuable skill for sure.
Yeah.
Why is it so common? Well, if I'm the average IT guy and I want to make sure that I'm going to be able to put food on the table, I'm going to go look for training and certifications that are going to be able to land me a job in a lot of places, right?
Right.
So a lot of people have gravitated that way because Microsoft OS has been so ubiquitous.
Yeah.
And so we see a lot of that out there. But that's pretty much where it stops. That's
Mhm.
their only skill set because they get into that company and the company may or may not be investing in training to help them grow that role because they run into another problem is if they train them up too much, what do? They leave
Right.
and go get a job somewhere else making more money. So I think those are the two scenarios that we see the most often.
I love the quote I see. I see this on LinkedIn a lot. Floating around as one of those memes that says, one business leader says to the other, "What if we train our employees and they leave?" And the other business leader says, "What if we don't train them and they stay?"
Yeah.
So I know, okay, so they're going to encounter skills gaps at some point in time. There's various scenarios that are going to cause that. If they don't address the skills gap and go out and get help, what are they probably going to end up with?
Sure. I think the most common thing is, and it's probably the one that is seen as the least threatening, but I think if we're realistic about it, it's really the worst, and that is they're going to end up with an IT infrastructure that really does nothing more than just the basics. It doesn't do anything to really help that company leverage technology and all it can do for them. So they may have the basics. It's 2017 now. I remember when InfoSystems first started out, it was the thing back then is we had lots of companies that had computers, but they had no network.
Yeah.
Their networking was, SneakerNet. It's run this floppy down to Sally and let her, edit the spreadsheet for me.
Yep.
It's 2017. Everybody's got a network now.
Yep.
And may or may not be done right, but they've got a network of some sort. Everybody's got word processing. Everybody's got email. So they've got the basic building blocks. But everybody's got the basic building blocks, so they're not doing anything to differentiate themselves and give them the tools to really let their business shine. So
Yeah.
I think that's the chief danger.
And I guess in that scenario that you described, IT is always going to be a limiting factor for that company.
Right.
They're never going to be able to, I guess, achieve what's possible for their company and use IT as a strategic advantage to advance their business. They're just going to always be held back
Right.
according to what's, what they have in-house and what's possible there. So here's an interesting question, and I'm not really sure if there's an answer to this at all, but is there such a thing? So let's say a company encounters some skills gaps and they don't address it for a long period of time. Is there such a thing as too late?
Well, anything can be fixed with enough time and money, right?
Yeah, right.
So, but I guess it could be too late if their business isn't performing and they don't have the means to fix it. Then yeah, I guess that is a possibility. I don't think we've run into that scenario yet. We've certainly run into some scenarios where they've let it go on for a long, long time. And so you run into situations, you run into catch-22 situations where a business will be, for example, they may be on a given piece of software, and then they've run this piece of software for years. It may have been a homebrew, it may have been just a legacy version of a popular software package, and they're comfortable with it. They don't want to change it. And meanwhile, the world around them has changed. Their operating systems are no longer supported by Microsoft. Their hardware doesn't have any type of support or warranty coverage on it. Maintenance contract might not be able to get parts anymore. So they're running on this. Lo and behold, one day they decide, ooh, there's this new piece of software. This would help my business. I want this. And so they go out and purchase it and find, oh, this isn't going to run on my platform.
Yeah.
This doesn't run on, Windows NT, to use a very dated example. But I saw one last month. A business still running Windows NT 4.0. It just simply it can't be done. So so they make the decision. All right, it's time. It's time to move up to Windows Server. I'm going to get something new hidden in here. And what they find out is their old legacy software that they're still very much attached to, it's not going to run on the new platforms well.
Right.
And so they end up having to make a decision of, well, I've got to make a change here, or I'm going to have to run multiple systems, which isn't very cost efficient. Virtualization helps with that, but you reach a point where you've got to keep moving forward. So those are the kind of things we run into all the time, that they've just simply let it drag on too long. And yes, it can be fixed, but it's painful.
Yeah.
It's painful both from a financial aspect. It's painful from a change aspect because, you're changing a whole lot at once. And,
right.
Us human beings don't like that. We don't mind change, but it needs to be baby steps over time.
And I guess in that scenario, you're looking at potentially greater impact on your business operation.
Right.
There may be interruptions because a simple incremental upgrade is now a major refresh, which can create a whole lot of problems, I guess. So here's we're at a point now where I think we can move to our weekly 30-second buzzword buster segment. So what we like to do here is, hopefully pick out a buzzword that is commonly used but maybe not always understood, and see if you can explain it in 30 seconds or less.
I think we agreed on 40, didn't we?
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, so no, 30 seconds. 30 seconds or less.
All right.
And use as little industry jargon as possible. And what's funny is you just said this word a moment ago.
Okay.
The buzzword today is virtualization.
Virtualization. So virtualization can happen in several different areas. Most common one I think we see is you think of a server. Server, you've got a piece of hardware, it runs an operating system. With virtualization, I can run several instances of Windows and keep those things separate so they're not stepping on each other, and allows me to get more out of that piece of hardware rather than it just sitting idle most of the time. I can really ramp up and get it to do more. It can also apply in storage, apply in networking, but virtualization is just the idea of adding an abstraction layer in there. Ooh, abstraction, that might be an industry term, but I'm over anyway, so I'm going to stop talking.
You hit 41 seconds that time, so But that was a harder concept, I guess, to
Yeah.
explain this, but virtualization, because it applies to so many different things. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people just think of virtualization with virtual servers. You hear that all the time, but
Right.
virtual, like you said, other pieces of infrastructure,
Sure.
firewalls, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we were discussing this topic, the top 3 IT challenges, and we were talking about today's challenge that we're kind of going through, you brought up a very interesting concept related to layers of technology, and the fact that an IT person, an IT staff person at a business
Mm-hmm.
may have expertise on a particular layer of IT, but there are other related layers that they may not have expertise with. So can you kind of expand on that, maybe provide examples of
Sure.
what that is?
So, we talked a few moments ago about the idea that, very common for a business to have a Microsoft expert who knows servers.
Mm-hmm.
He may know server hardware as well, so he's very comfortable. You sit him down in front of a server, load that operating system on it. So, but virtualization is certainly one of those layers. In today's world, it makes a whole lot of financial sense to consider virtualizing your server. So if you've got someone who doesn't have that layer of technology, they might go out and virtualize a bunch of things on Microsoft's Hyper-V. Microsoft
Mhm.
makes it fairly easy to virtualize, but they've neglected to think about, now I'm putting all those servers in one physical box. Have I properly designed for resiliency, redundancy? Have I protected myself in that way? Another layer would be networking. All the pieces that connect everything. And that networking is becoming more and more important in today's world. Now that we're talking about hybrid cloud systems, so now some of my data resides somewhere else, some of it resides here. I've got to have good networking in place to do all that connectivity together.
Mhm.
And gone are the days when it made sense for someone to just go down to the local Best Buy and pick up some switches, and they just, walk in, and I'll find that someone's bought 3 or 4 switches, and we have a joke with one of our sales guys here. People daisy chaining switches together, and it violates all sorts of networking rules, and it creates all kinds of congestion
Yeah.
on their network. It works,
Mhm.
right? So it has the appearance of working out of the box, but the speed's not what it should be, and the reliability is not what it should be, and productivity suffers as a result of it.
I'm sure there's when you talk about some of these things, there's probably downstream effects
Absolutely.
that people are going, and having to trace some of those things back to the source, when you're talking about multiple layers, I would assume that's a challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the list just keeps going on. There's networking, there's storage, there's the aspect of security.
Mm-hmm.
Security has become, although it kind of touches every area of your business, it's a layer in and of itself. Just the idea of keeping up with what's it take to keep all this secure and compliance. More and more businesses are having to answer to someone, whether it be PCI compliance for credit card, whether it be HIPAA for medical. We've got customers that have got to answer to the Department of Homeland Security to make sure that their stuff is being secured correctly.
And I guess when you're talking about especially security and compliance, the potential impact if things aren't done correctly, usually I would imagine far outweighs the cost of actually doing things right in the first
Absolutely.
place.
So a breach could cost you thousands and thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars in a couple different ways. A breach could result in lost intellectual property. A breach could result in lost customer data that you're now liable to the customer for. It could result in fines, penalties. It could result in just lost business because people lose trust in you.
Yeah.
So yeah, the implications are incredibly serious.
So when we were talking about layers of IT, and I just began thinking that there's probably a wide range of complexity of certain aspects of IT based on that particular business.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I immediately thought of was, you may have a small office where all you have to have is one wireless router
Right.
as an access point for everybody in the office. And then on the other end of the spectrum, the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we did a wireless project for Ruby Falls
Yeah.
here at Lookout Mountain, where we completely wired their entire underground cave system with Wi-Fi
Right.
access points, so that as people, customers, visitors, navigate through the tour, they can stay connected to Wi-Fi the entire time. And I think Ruby Falls has even built an experience around that. So that's obviously a way different scenario than that small office scenario. So what other areas of IT may have really wide-ranging complexities like that? And at what point does a company need to say, this is beyond us, we need to go get someone to help us with this?
Yeah, Josh, that's an excellent example of the wireless one. And again, it's one that we run into on a frequent basis, because you said wireless can in of itself, people have wireless at home, right?
Yeah.
They plug in a wireless router, they put in a pass key, hopefully. They select the proper security mechanisms, hopefully. But wireless, just to serve a room like this, that's not too complex.
Mm-hmm.
Wireless to serve a Ruby Falls, or even something a little less complex, a multi-floor building,
Mm-hmm.
right? That gets a whole lot more complex. And too often we'll walk in and we'll see, someone has, again, just gone and picked up a few wireless routers. They're really designed to work in a home environment.
Yeah.
And they work on a floor, but they soon find that those wireless routers aren't designed to be managed and work in tandem with each other. They don't hand off from place to place. I'll go in and I'll find that a business will have multiple SSIDs. So if I'm here, I've got to connect to this network. But if I'm here, I've got to connect to another network. And it's because that's a skills gap. They just simply don't know that wireless in a commercial environment is way different than wireless in a home environment.
So they just encounter a problem when we get to a certain part of our building. We no longer have a strong enough internet connection. We need to go buy another router.
Yeah.
How would that person get to the point where they say, hey, we probably need to reach out to a professional for help here?
Well, I think it usually comes in, they reach the frustration point.
Yeah.
And, more and more businesses are starting to provide guest access to their
Yeah.
customers. So a lot of times they finally reach the point when one of their customers keeps complaining, well, this doesn't actually work. Sometimes they reach the point when they have a new hire. That new hire will come in and go, this wireless system is terrible. At my last job, I could just roam freely from zone to zone. I had good coverage. I never had to reconnect to a new network.
Yeah.
And so they realize, wow, this isn't how it should be designed. And so they finally do reach out for help.
Yeah, I guess there's a value to even just having someone who can evaluate
Sure.
what's going on in your company is related to technology that hasn't been isolated to that environment for a period of time. And I guess that's another advantage of engaging with an IT partner is you do get that outside perspective.
Right.
And as you've mentioned several times in our episodes so far, perspective from a company who has seen hundreds
Right.
of other environments to compare it to, which has value.
I think that's really one of our biggest strengths. So we cover everything from the small mom and pop shop to we have some multinational corporations, and yeah, there's certainly differences between them, but we get a wealth of knowledge from working in all these different environments and find things that are going to work for you.
Okay, last thing I wanted to bring up in today's episode. we're talking about skills gaps. And you mentioned at the beginning of the episode that the IT environment today, there are so many potential specializations out there.
Right.
It's mind-boggling. I saw a statistic the other day as I was reading some articles online that said one of the most in-demand skills is also one of the most scarce skills, and that was people with a really deep ability in artificial
I
intelligence.
saw that article.
And
Yes.
so this article was making the point that if you have that skill, you can command a salary right now of anywhere between like a minimum of $300,000 up to an 8-figure salary. We're talking tens of millions of dollars. So as technology becomes more and more specialized and the IT abilities and skills become more and more specialized, obviously companies that need access to those resources, the price obstacle is going to get more and more hard to address, because how many companies can go out and hire a new IT person or a new IT
Right.
and pay them more than $300,000
Yeah. Not-
just
not
for
very many.
one particular skill? Yeah, not many. So what impact does that have on small business leaders, and what do they need to know about companies like InfoSystems who are always trying to stay up to date on all of those specializations and skills?
Well, I think it's identifying, the things that are in your business. And by the way, we work with a wide variety. We're comfortable working with a company that has no IT staff. We're comfortable working with one that is fully staffed but just needs some help. They may have staff that will do the very everyday stuff, but they bring us in for special projects or for high-level management of the whole thing. So you're right. It doesn't make sense, and we'll go back to our wireless example again. It doesn't make sense for a company to go out and find someone who's got their certification in installing, configuring, and deploying wireless networks that's got that skill level. Well, why? Well, because they're going to put that wireless network in, they're going to get it right, and then it's probably just going to run for a while and it's going to be good.
My job's done.
Yeah, my job's done. I don't need that guy still on staff.
Yeah.
Whereas, I can outsource that to someone like an InfoSystems we have that guy,
Yeah.
and we keep him busy at multiple customer locations. So
Right.
it just makes more sense for everyone concerned.
Yeah, I guess maybe the companies that require that type of level of AI skills, maybe we're just talking about Google, Apple, and some of the extremely large companies out there. But there are a lot of other very specialized skills that are in
Absolutely.
demand that apply to small business in our region. So let's say if a company wants to modernize and they want to take advantage of some new technology out there, what practical advice can you offer related to their existing IT personnel and the option of outsourcing? Because I know this is an interesting discussion point, because a lot of times IT people see outside IT companies as competition.
Absolutely.
They're trying to take my job, they
Yeah.
want to replace me. But that's not the case, obviously.
No.
So what can you add to that statement or that topic about the IT person and the IT company working together?
Sure. So I think the first thing I would say is, when management's considering doing this, is engage with your IT people. Give them a seat at the table, so that they can be a part of those discussions. A lot of times we are called in, and it is under the cloak of darkness, so to speak.
Sure.
It's like, I don't want our IT people to know that we're talking to you right now, because they're going to feel threatened. Well, yeah, they are.
Yeah.
And
even more so if they're not aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you, certainly there are instances when we've gone in and replaced an IT staff, but those are few and far between. And probably those individuals needed to be replaced because they weren't pulling their weight,
Right.
right? But if you go into a company and the IT people are really, they're doing their job the best they can, and they've got their area that they have expertise on, we're there to complement that and help them work through things, take the load off of the things that they're not skilled in, and let them concentrate on the things that they want to work on.
Yeah.
And that can be either way. We've gone into companies and helped them with the grunt work, so to speak, and let them concentrate on special projects. More common is we let them concentrate on the daily stuff because that's what they like to do, and we
Sure.
come in with the special projects and, put in the system, give them some skills training on how to manage that system going forward, and then we may be gone, or we may be a long-term partner with them and helping them manage their infrastructure from a high level.
And you brought up having a seat at the table. So if I was going to close this episode out with a thought, I was watching a keynote address recently from HubSpot's marketing conference. And the keynote speaker, I guess it was the CEO of HubSpot, his name's Dharmesh Shah. And he was talking about a dinner he had, or an opportunity he had at a dinner to sit next to Elon Musk.
Oh, wow.
And have a conversation. And he said Elon Musk starts talking about linear vectors. And, when you hear a guy like Elon Musk start talking with terms like that, you're about to wade into some interesting waters, right?
Really?
But he made the point to Dharmesh Shah that in business, if you have 2 employees headed in one direction and 2 other employees headed in another direction, the net of that is 0. So your linear vector is 0. They cancel each other out. And so, you and I talked about this, and you brought up the point of IT personnel having a seat at the table with business executives or business leaders and not being kept in the dark when it comes to business decisions and things like that. Because he went on to say about the linear vectors, if you have, those same 4 people headed in the same direction but maybe at a different angle, you're making progress, but it's still not as efficient as it could be. Right. And it's not really until you have all 4 of those employees in complete alignment headed in the same direction that you're really moving your business in the optimal way. And so to bring that back, I guess to close the circle there, having your IT people, your IT partners, your business leaders, all at the table, having these discussions, coming up with decisions that everyone agrees with or is at least, can reason with and agree to, and then everyone move in the direction in the same manner. That's what it takes.
It does.
For business to move forward. So any thoughts to add to that?
Well, I think it solves a lot of problems. Communication is, I've heard it said many times, communication is the hardest job we have.
Yeah.
And it's certainly, I think, the most important. We've got to talk. And there's a lot of ways to get there from here. Quite frankly, in some of our environments, we've got IT people who are perfectly happy and comfortable sitting there at the table with the management team. There are IT people that aren't comfortable with that, and that's the way they're wired. We've got companies that we fulfill that role for them as well. I do that for multiple companies. I'm the guy that sits at the management meeting, and then I interface with their in-house IT people to translate, right? We were talking about language earlier today. Business leaders and IT people, they each have their own language, right?
Right.
Neither one of them's wrong, they're just different.
Yeah.
And so I get to spend a lot of my time translating between the two, because it's all too common that management and IT are at odds with each other, and it's really just because of poor communication.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they really want the same things, they just don't know how to talk, or they're not talking.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage them that's something that really has to be solved.
And I guess when you think about it, that's probably the most common problem in business, period.
Sure.
Communication problems.
Absolutely.
We're just sort of bringing that down to the level of IT and business leadership.
Right.
And, you know, I guess the message we're trying to share is it's possible to have everyone on the same page, and we can help create that scenario.
Absolutely.
So I guess that's a good thought to leave our viewers on. And coming up next episode, we'll move on to your second IT challenge for small business. I won't spill the beans and release that information now. You know, here's another cliffhanger. They'll have to listen in to hear what the next IT challenge is. But based on what, you know, our conversation today, I can tell this is some very valuable insight
I hope
that
so.
small business leaders will be tuning in to hear. So I'm looking forward to the next discussion.
Yeah, I as well.